It's November 1, 2025, and this is season 4, episode 32 of Two Guys on Politics, which is broadcast on the U.S. Arab Radio Network on WNZK AM 690 radio in Michigan, as well as on YouTube at twoguysonpolitics.com. You want to go there to subscribe at twoguysonpolitics.com. In today's podcast, we're going to discuss a number of issues. The first, Illinois hikes its taxes to save the city and puts the burden on suburbanites and the rest of the state. It's a financial mess. And sales tax, all this stuff is going to go up. We're going to also talk about the continued battle between Mamdani and Cuomo in New York for the office of mayor of New York City. That election is November 4th, just in a few days. And we're going to also talk about Trump's visit to Asia and his nuclear retesting plan that he announced. So, he's been stopping, he says, 7, 8 wars. I don't know where all these wars are at, but apparently he jumped in really quick and prevented them so fast they didn't even report on him. And then there's a story about the Michigan police cracking down on terrorism in Dearborn. We'll talk a little bit about that too. I'm Ray Hanania, and I'm going to be on with Bill Lipinski just in a couple minutes. We'll be right back right after these messages. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski, and this is Two Guys on Politics. And the next voice you hear will be that of authority, Mr. Ray Hanania.
And listen, I don't know, you woke up, you probably felt the money leaving your wallet this morning, right, Bill? From all the new taxes that the state of Illinois is. I don't understand. I mean, we can go through some of those taxes in a minute, but you know what really bothers me? Don't we have anybody that can say, hey, instead of throwing money at our problems, let's come up with creative ways to make things better. You and I talked with a friend of ours this other day that part of the problem in Chicago and why they had to raise the taxes was because of the problems with the CTA, the cost, the services, blah, blah, blah. Who knows what's going on there? But we had a dinner with Tom Seraphin the other day, and you and him were talking about that maybe they should merge Metra, the RTA, and the CTA together, right? To
Well,
make it a better system.
back when I was in Congress, of course, I was on the Transportation Committee in the U.S. House of Representatives. When Rod Blagojevich became governor of the state of Illinois, I had strongly supported him. And I had a plan to merge Metra, the CTA, and PACE into one entity. All right. So what you would do there would get rid of you'd get rid of two different administrations. Okay. The people who worked for CTA, the people who work for Metra, you'd get rid of them. We'll use the people from PACE as the administrative staff for this new transit agency. It would be one agency. It would put the three of those transit agencies together. So you would reduce the amount of money the administrative cost would be. Okay. You would start out the first year, you would let the collar counties select who the chairman of the new metropolitan transit organization would be. They'd serve for 2 years. The next 2 years, it'd be a chairman from DuPage County, the second largest county. The next 2 years would be from the city of Chicago. So you would rotate that around. So
Right.
each entity of government would have an opportunity to have the head man, but you'd have 15 appointed from Chicago, 15 from DuPage, 15 from the collar counties. You would balance it off. I think it would give you a much more balanced approach to transportation than we have now. You have a situation in many places where you have metro buses, CTA buses running down the same streets, the same routes, vying to pick up the same passengers. It's
That aren't
ridiculous.
even there. And yeah, they're
That's
not even
another
there
point.
half the time.
So,
But
that's what I had suggested. I put it all together. I took it to Speaker Madigan at the time, and he said, it's a wonderful idea. I'd love to implement it, but it's impossible. I says, why? He
yeah,
says, too many political considerations in the collar counties, in DuPage, in the city of Chicago. Right now, the city of Chicago has as much influence as they can possibly get. You would dilute their influence by implementing this plan that you have. Consequently, their state senators, their state reps will not vote for a plan like this. So, Bill, it's a wonderful idea. Excuse me, but it's not going to work.
yeah. I mean, listen, that is a that is a good plan that addresses the political problem that we have with transportation. And by the way, transportation is just one part of why they raised all these taxes. It's just outrageous. $1.5 billion in new taxes we're going to get hit with on top of the taxes they passed the year before already that they threw on us. And they think they're cute. The last group of taxes, they said, oh, they won't start for a year. And they just started. It was like a year and a half ago. The CTA has always been, I remember from when I first started at the Southtown and then even at the Sun Times, every time the CTA has a problem, they reach into the back pockets of the suburbanites, take money, and shore up the CTA. I'm sure the CTA wasn't as bad when your dad was there, Bill. And I remember growing up using it. It was a good system. It worked, but it doesn't work today, and it's bloated. And the big defense, one of the things that you keep hearing the politicians say is, well, there are 15,000 employees that are impacted, and we got to be careful not to undermine them. And when you look at that 15,000, you find that 12,000 of them are with the CTA, and the other 3,000 are actually with Metra and the RTA, I think, which only has 143 employees. And listen, my dad, if he wasn't making enough money to put steak on the table, he'd put chicken on the table. And you got to cut back the budget to deal with the problems. What the CTA has to do is they have to raise fares, not make the suburbanites pay for their continued problems every decade for the last 4 decades, going back to the 80s. We keep paying for that problem. It's horrible. It's horrific.
But Ray, don't you realize if the city of Chicago did not exist, there would be no suburbs. There'd be no DuPage County. There'd be no collar counties. Without the city of Chicago, you people who live in the suburbs, including me, everything would dry up and go away. That's the argument that you get from the city of Chicago. Now, there is some truth in that. But let me tell you something. My father drove a streetcar in a bus for the Chicago Transit Authority. When he was working for the Chicago Surface Lines, a private organization that owned, the Chicago Surface Lines at the time, he was making a lower middle class income. When the CTA took it over, governmental agency, the union came in very, very strong. That went up to where it was a strong middle class job.
Right.
Now I'm for unions, okay? I've
Yes,
always
me
been
too. I am too. I
for
agree.
unions, but sometimes they go over the top. The standard of living that we had when he worked for the Chicago Transit Authority was considerably less than what we had when he worked for the CTA. Okay, I'm using the
That
wrong.
there.
First of all, he worked for the Chicago Surface Lines. Then he
Right.
worked for the CTA. He was
Right.
much better off working for the CTA. But was that salary that he was getting, was it really a true compensation or was it bloated because of the unions and the government being involved?
Yeah. One of the problems I think is, the unions are great. I mean, they do a great job of representing the interests of workers. They get them money. It's not their fault that the money they get keeps coming out of the taxpayer's pocket. There's nobody, though, to balance off the equation. You got the unions fighting for money and pensions and benefits, which is great, but there's nobody in government who is equal to that in terms of fighting for services, better services, making the CTA more efficient. It's the most inefficient system we have. How can it be so bloated? Bill, I mean, the costs are just skyrocketing and they can't produce anything because people are afraid to take the buses today. You know, the world when your dad was there, it was a much better world. Things were affordable. The CTA worked. I used to take the bus all the time. It was safe. Even, I'm telling you, we were in grammar school. We'd take the bus from the south side of Chicago, had to be in the late 60s when the movie Goldfinger came out. We paid 12 cents. We took a bus all the way downtown to go to the movie. Kids that were like 12 and 13 years old on a bus on their own downtown. Do you think I'd ever let my son get on a bus, public transportation today, go
I
downtown?
hope not.
I wouldn't. And that's part of the problem. Chicago is the problem. The crime in Chicago is the problem. And they play a relative game where, oh, crime is down this year. Yeah, it was down compared to last year, but it's still high. It's still terrible.
Oh, I can't wait until we get to discussing the New York mayor's race.
We're going to get there in a minute, but I'm ready for that one, Bill. But listen, what they did in Springfield, and again, I don't understand why don't we have good leadership to say,
Ray,
let's
let me interrupt
combine.
you for a minute. The
Go ahead.
problem in Springfield is that the Democrats control everything. Just
Yes,
like the problem in Washington is the
yes,
Republicans control everything. The worst thing for this city, county, state, country is one party rule.
yeah,
What
yeah.
we need to have is divided government. That is the only way that the ordinary citizen, the ordinary voter, really gets a good deal.
Yeah, when I wrote my column today at Hanania.com about this issue of taxes, that's the one point I put in there too. I said that in Illinois, the Republicans are screaming about, oh, look what the Democrats are doing. And I said, wait a minute, the Republican Party is a disaster. Their leaders are terrible. They have no good ideas. They've collapsed in Illinois. The Republicans are decimated in this state, but they want to, and their only answer to that is to point fingers at the Democrats, who, and I agree with you, if there is no checks and balances, the Democrats are going to do whatever they want to do, and it's not going to be in the best interest of the people. It's going to be in the best interest of the Democrats. But the Republicans can't hide behind the fact that they're losing seats. The Republicans have done a terrible job of representing the Republican Party in this state. Their leaders are part of the problem, and you're absolutely right. If we had a good Republican leadership, it would force the Democratic leadership to be better. But we don't. So they do whatever they want to do. I think that's a major point that nobody speaks to or addresses, but they should.
Absolutely. And we have the
And
same
then,
federal level.
yes, right. And on the national level too. I mean, we get all you're right. It's the Republicans are driving everything because the Democrats are a disaster. They have no leaders on the national. Of course, you know, the solution apparently is let's elect J.B. Pritzker, the governor of one of the worst states in the union where all the taxes are increasing. I wonder if he's going to campaign on this. You know, hey, there isn't a tax that we can't get passed. That could be his motto. And Rahm Emanuel, he was mayor for 2 terms, 8 years, and he left the city in a disaster. He walked away from it doing nothing. The finances were horrible, and he wants to run for president too. So, yeah, the Democrats lack good leaders to fight off what Trump and the Republicans are doing nationally. And all we have to throw at them are these tax and spend Democrats from Illinois. That's the worst option.
I think most of them are democratic socialists, really.
You think, oh, there you go, trying to slip in that Mamdani-Cuomo Cuomo. We're going to get there, Bill. We're going to get there. Don't worry about it. But let me just say, here's what the taxes are. They're going to raise $1.5 billion to cover Chicago's problems. And the majority of it is really going to come not from the city of Chicago, but from the suburbs, from the six-county region, and from the rest of the state. In fact, the rest of the state is going to get nothing. I feel sorry for downstate people. I can't imagine them living in this state, downstate, with no voice in Springfield and no influence of what's going on. But they're going to increase the costs. They're going to increase the sales tax, the percentage, the RTA sales tax. The RTA, which is a suburban transit, the Regional Transportation Authority, supposedly that's supposed to emphasize the suburbs. It only has 143 employees, I think. They're going to increase the sales tax by 25 cents to 1 cent to 1%. I'm sorry, they get 25.25% to 1 full percent in the six-county region and 1.25% in Cook County. So it's going to go up in Cook County. But again, that's going to hit the suburbanites more than it's going to hit the people in Chicago. Supposedly, it's going to take $478 million from our pockets each year. You know that's going to be massive. And then they increase the tolls. Who's using the tolls? The people in Chicago? No. It's the people in the suburbs and downstate. They're going to increase tolls 45 cents for every toll. Every time. It's a 60% hike. It's just outrageous. And I don't get it. How we let them do it and nobody protests, which is why the legislature isn't afraid to do it. Even the Democrats. If I were a Democrat, I'd be afraid to raise these and go back to my constituents and say, hey, I did boost up the sales tax. I did boost up, the tolls and a lot of other. I don't even have the whole list of all the things that they did. But we're going to take 1.5 billion out of your pocket. And I hope you don't mind. And can you reelect me? And we do. I don't get it, Bill.
Well,
Don't.
you're getting it, Raymond. Well, you know it or not.
Well, I mean, listen, there's nothing we can do, right? Because we, instead of addressing
Yes, you can
problems,
go out and elect Republicans to state government. That's what you
yeah,
can. You live in a representative democracy. Get
I,
out there and work for the Republican Party. On the federal level, get out there and work for the Democratic Party. I'm tired of people complaining about government when all they do is sit home, watch television, eat
right.
popcorn, drink beer or soda, and complain about government. Get out
That's
there and
true.
do something. If those
That's
people
true.
during the Revolutionary War had stayed home instead of going out to fight, we'd still be a colony of the British Empire.
Well, I think if there were some good Republicans to vote for, now I live in Orland Park, and I think Liz Gorman is she's running for the Cook County Board again to get back on there. She was a foe of tax hikes, and she did a lot to stop those tax increases. So she's one person I'm going to support. But there aren't a lot of people like her. The Republicans that we have are people just like the Dems. We've cultured we've nurtured a culture where in politics where you have a problem with your computer, let's just spend $5,000 to get a new computer. Oh, wait, the computer's not working right. Hey, let's buy another computer for $20,000 from my friend who runs a computer company. We're not addressing the problems. And instead, all we're doing is raising costs. And I'm not against raising costs on the rich. Are you, Bill? I mean, the what really wealthy,
Well,
the
what do you
top,
consider really wealthy?
someone who earns $1 million a year or more each year.
Okay.
If your income is 1 million or more, I consider you wealthy. And there are more and more of those people, far more. Even I would say if you're earning $500,000 a year or more, that you're pretty wealthy. And they should have a bigger burden. They don't put the burden on them on the
Why should
paying
they,
socials.
just because you're more successful in this society, why should you have to pay more to keep it up?
Well, because you're part of society, and if you want to exploit society for your profits, you should be able to help society survive. Because I would spend more money if I didn't have to pay so much in taxes for products.
You said exploit society. That sounds
Yes.
something like socialism to me.
Well, I mean, listen, it is in a way because the people are being exploited. The average people that have no voice. And you're right. I mean, they sit back and they drink their beers and their couch potato watching streaming TV on Netflix and Hulu, and they don't care about what's going on. And they work hard, and more of their money goes for taxes. They need to stand up and do something, but they're not. And I agree with you. It's their
Absolutely.
fault. But the answer is the people who make the money. Social Security is a good example. They put a cap. If you make more than $176,000 a year, they don't tax anything above that number.
Wrong.
They only tax
Absolutely wrong.
everything below
Always been
176,000.
wrong. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And why do that? Why put a cap on what gets taxed for Social Security? If I make $1 million, my entire million should be taxed for Social Security, and that money should go into the pool for everybody else.
Do you
But
know
they
why there's a
protect the
cap
rich
on?
and wealthy
Do you
because
know why?
half the Congress and the Senate are wealthy millionaires. That's why.
Do you know why there's a cap on Social Security?
I don't know, and it's not a good
Well,
reason,
the
but go
only
ahead.
reason there's a cap on it is because when Franklin Delano Roosevelt passed it, okay, he originally didn't want any cap on it, but they contended that he was a socialist, he was a communist, he was putting the
There you go.
tax on everybody that, made a nickel or a dime in this country. And in order to prove that he wasn't, he put a cap on it, that you only had to pay up to a certain point. And there have been many, many times since then that people tried to lift the cap or raise
Right,
the cap, but they have been unsuccessful because the big money interests have stopped them from doing so, which is a
right,
terrible mistake. You should be taxed for Social Security on every single penny you get. And I'm not a big tax supporter.
right. No,
What's
I
fair
agree.
is fair.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it doesn't have to be a giant tax, but tax every dollar fairly because the wealthy, the majority of their money doesn't get taxed the way mine does. We're under the 200,000, 250,000. I'm getting taxed like crazy for everything. And I'm looking at somebody making 5 million a year and he's only getting taxed for the same amount of money that I'm getting taxed for. That doesn't seem right to me. So, but
Oh,
you did throw around the socialist label in a very positive way there when they attacked that poor uh, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Which we can use that if you want. If you had another comment, go ahead,
because
Bill.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt came from one of the wealthiest families in the country at the time.
Well, don't all the politicians, the big ones, come from the wealthiest families? Because
Oh
if they're
no,
not
my
wealthy,
man Reagan, he was born up poor in Central Illinois.
yeah, he was a good, he well. That's one reason why we like him. He was a good
Right,
guy.
absolutely.
He never forgot his roots. He was a conservative, but he was in the middle of the road sometimes, and he did what was common sense rather than political ideology. So let's shift gears now and go to the New York City race
Oh, okay.
where socialism is being thrown around like mud. They're calling Zoran Mamdani, who's running against Andrew Cuomo, and he's being attacked as not just a socialist, he's an Islamist, a
An
terrorist
extremist,
supporting
an extreme Islamist.
Zoran Mamdani. They're attacking him, and they just throw labels at him. And you made a good point though there with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. They threw that label socialist at him, and
Absolutely.
instead of sticking up for what he believed was right, it was such a powerful label he backed down and agreed to impose that limit on the amount of money that would be taxed for Social Security. And that was a big mistake. So I look at Zoran Mamdani as the modern day Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yeah, well,
Thank you for that, Bill.
yeah, well, you're welcome. Uh,
Uh,
I don't know where to start on this guy, Ray, but I want, first of all, I
Sure.
want to say that because this is probably about the only thing I'll say in support of your buddy Mamdani, uh, that I watch Andrew Cuomo every night of the week. I think he's the most
Chris, Chris
Chris,
Cuomo, you
I'm
mean Chris
sorry.
Cuomo? No,
Yeah,
no, that's
Chris
all right.
Cuomo.
Chris Cuomo. Yeah, does that Newsmax, I think, or something.
No. News
The
Nation.
News Nation.
Newsmax is extreme right wing. This
Yeah,
is
they are. You're right.
no.
I'm sorry. That
And
is,
I
there are
think
too
he's
many news stations out there now, and it's hard to figure out what's what.
okay. Well, when you're finished talking, and if I have an
Go
opportunity,
ahead. Go ahead.
Como, I think, is the most objective individual as a talking head on television.
Chris
Okay.
Cuomo. Yeah, I
Now,
agree. He's
he
good.
leans to the left a little bit, but
Yes.
I like him. I think he's very objective. But I have to say to you, the last week or so, he has had a segment on every single program of his that has been against Muslims. Okay, talking about how not all Muslims, of course, not all of them,
Right.
but how in our country now, probably the greatest danger comes from these radical Muslims. Okay, like he talked about last night, the situation in Dearborn, Michigan,
Right.
about being a hotbed of where all these Arabs and Muslims live, and where there was a revolution coming out. What did they find? Two guys with some guns. That was the revolution. But anyway,
Allegedly. Yeah.
he he has talked about that. Never said anything about the New York mayor's race. Okay,
Right.
but he's talking to you about these radical Muslims. It just happens to be a Muslim who's running against his brother
Right.
for mayor of New York City. I think that is wrong. Now, I don't say, I would hope that I wouldn't do something like that. I would
Right.
hope that you wouldn't do something like that.
Right.
But I don't really know because we're not in that position. But I do know it's wrong. It should not have been done that way. I just want to say that before I launch into my attack upon your candidate.
No, no, that's okay. I mean, listen, Mamdani, I agree with you that, Mamdani is pushing issues that you may or may not agree with, like rent freeze or increased affordable housing production, tenant protections. He wants a free public bus system. I wish they'd do that in Chicago and make the CTA free and find a way to fund that with all the money they're taking from us. He
People
wants
in the
improved.
suburbs pay for it, Ray.
Right, we do pay for it, but they should expand it to cover the six county, redo the entire transportation in the six county region. That's basically what he wants to do. He wants to improve the transit service. He wants to support taxi cab drivers. He wants to increase taxes on the wealthy. And the only response that we're getting from Andrew Cuomo, who has a litany of problems, is that he's an Islamist who hates Israel. That's his message basically. And I think you're right. And again, I thought you're very fair in pointing that out with Chris Cuomo. The brother keeps fueling that image of radical Islam without tying it to his brother, but it's intended clearly to help his brother base his campaign that if you elect Zohran Mamdani, the radical Islamist will take over the United States.
Now, the first problem I have with your candidate is that he walks around and he says he's been walking around in the shadows for years. You
Right.
know, that everybody's against him. Society presses down upon him. You know what his father is, Ray?
Yeah, I know his mother is some movie producer.
Nominated for 2 Academy Awards. She
Yes.
certainly has been oppressed. No question about it in this society. His father is a full professor at Columbia University. You know what he teaches? How the great powers have been colonialists and how they've put their their jackboot on the throats of so many downtrodden people
I
around the world.
I
He's
should take that
retired.
class. I should take that class. It sounds exactly what's been happening in American politics.
It sounds to me like you've taken that class. Okay, so this guy has, he's gone to the finest, prep school in all of New York State. He's gone to wonderful colleges.
Right.
Portrays himself. We got a guy here in Illinois the same way. Just call me whatever they want to call him.
Roger.
Like he's poor. He
It's
raises more money than any candidate for Congress, probably in the history of the United States of America. But he comes across. I just do not like these people who cannot be honest about what they are and what they represent. Okay, there's many things that socialists do that I think are probably a good idea to help out a lot of people. Okay. But admit what you're doing. Admit you're taking money away from the rich and giving it to the poor. Now, I don't mind that, but I don't want to give it to this poor person his entire life unless he's disabled. Many of them could get up and go out to work. The
I
rents,
agree with that.
okay. Now, in New York State, New York City, there are so many people looking for homes outside of New York, okay, that the property values in Connecticut are skyrocketing because people want to get out of New York because they are afraid of what is going to happen when your man gets elected mayor of New York. Now, I think he is going to get elected. Cuomo, unfortunately, is not much of an alternative.
Right.
Okay. About his campaign is I'm not a Muslim. Okay. I'm not anti-Jews. That's my
Right.
campaign. I don't think
Right.
that's much of a campaign at all. It's
Right.
very, very unfortunate that the largest city or the second largest city, whatever it is nowadays, in this country would wind up having two candidates such as that. Your candidate's got a lot of charisma. He seems like a nice looking guy. But some of the things he has said, frankly, scare me. But I think he very well is going to win. I think he very well could become the face of the National Democratic Party. And I think he could become their presidential candidate in 2 years. And I mean that seriously. Uh,
No,
that'd be fine with me because I think he'd crash and burn, and that would destroy the present Democratic Party, which to me is far to the left, and it could reconstruct itself more as the Democratic Party that I once joined a long time ago that fought for the rights of the middle class and, the poorer people, not these extreme views. Well, okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox.
no,
That's
no, that's all right. That's what this is. This podcast isn't soapbox. We want
okay.
people to hear those views, so there's nothing wrong with it. What's interesting to me is their achievements are presented as a detriment when they should be praised. His father and his mother. I mean, yeah,
Oh, I think
it's
it's wonderful that they've achieved
yeah,
those things.
yes, they have. But I think you touched on what the real problem is. It's political relativity. Zoran Mamdani is better than Cuomo and Eric Adams, and even Curtis Sliwa, who I know personally. He's a good guy, but he's not a good mayoral candidate. He's better than them. The problem is it's the Democratic Party that doesn't have somebody better than Mamdani. And you're mad at Mamdani, and you would rather, because of his policies, and you would rather support a guy like Cuomo, who is far worse than Mamdani, because you're focused on Mamdani rather than being focused on what Cuomo might bring back to New York City. And I think what Cuomo has done has been terrible. Even Mayor Adams. I mean, just a quick look at it's funny how voters would rather would rather have somebody who's been accused in campaign corruption, like Eric Adams. He was forced down and he was being charged. And Trump basically said, listen, if you step down in this race, we'll drop the charges. And they basically dropped the charges to help Eric Adams. That's what Trump does. So they dropped all those charges. And Mario Cuomo, his problem was that he was accused of abusing and failing.
Excuse me. It's not Mario Cuomo. Mario Cuomo
I'm
was the
sorry, not Andrew Cuomo. There's so many
okay.
Cuomos. There've been too many Cuomos in political life. We got to get rid of it. Andrew Cuomo was accused of undercounting nursing home deaths in COVID to manage and manipulate all the federal funding that was coming into the state, and he was going to be charged with that back then. It was he treated it like there was nothing going on, and the other part of Andrew Cuomo is he's been accused repeatedly of sexually harassing women who have worked for him. Now, it's either an Islamist who criticizes Israel or someone, a sexual predator, or someone who accepts crime. To me, the choice is obvious. I'd rather have the Islamist because he reminds me of what they did to John F. Kennedy in the 1960s, the Islamic Catholic leader.
Well, but they were afraid of the Catholics taking over and controlling things. Well,
Have they done that?
Well, 6 out of 9 members of the Supreme Court are Catholic. I think they've done a pretty good job.
All right. So we can look for 6 out of 9 members of the Supreme Court are going to be Muslim if this trend keeps going, right?
No question about it. Yes.
All right, Bill. Listen, I know we probably have more to say about Mamdani and
let me
Cuomo.
ask,
Go ahead.
who do you think is going to win that race?
I think Mamdani is going to win.
And
I think it's because of the choice. I think Andrew Cuomo is a terrible choice. He lost the first election, but in losing, they revived him and said, oh, no, run as an independent because they hate Mamdani. And I think that the opposition in the politics is driven more by hate and fear than it is about focusing on who could bring the best solutions to the city of New York.
I don't know if it's hate, but it certainly is fear. They fear him because of the fact that he's a Muslim. Okay. And we have not really had much experience with Muslims being in power in this country. Now, the country being what it is, you're going to find more and more in those cases, which is fine. Right. This is the land of opportunity for everybody. All right. But I think it's fear on the part of people. And I hope those fears are not really founded very well.
Well, he's not Osama bin Laden's son. He's the son of 2 very successful Muslims who have done great things in this country.
Right.
So I don't understand, I really believe they're using that Islamic issue as a cover for their own weaknesses and failures. And that does bother me a little bit.
Bill, they've done the same thing to the Jewish people in this country.
And
absolutely. They did the same thing to the Catholics at one time in this country. It unfortunately is it's a problem we have here. But it's a minor problem in comparison to what so many other countries have with the same situation.
All right, Bill, let's take a quick break because we've been this segment has gone on pretty long. And we can still continue talking about Mamdani and Cuomo if you want after the break. But we're going to take a quick break, folks, and we'll be right back right after these messages. We're back here at Two Guys on Politics, Ray Hanania with Bill Lipinski. Bill, do you feel safer that Trump has resolved all the world's problems during his Asia trip? He's done so many great things he told us, patting himself on the back every night on TV.
Well, he had that meeting in in Korea with the head of China, and on a scale of 1 to 10, it was a 12.
That's what he said, right? Now, if 10 is the best, it's a 12. Now, and I thought about it. I said, okay, maybe 12 isn't the best then. If 10 is the best, what is a 12? 12 is an exaggerated, I have no idea what he's done in Asia and why he even took that trip. But his fake tariffs.
That's what it is. The Trumpism when it's 12. Why did he take the trip? I don't know. Maybe I'll tell you. Before I get into why, what did he accomplish in China? He accomplished nothing, moving everything the way it was back in May of this year.
Exactly.
We're right back to where it was in May. Now, all the pain, all the suffering that people in this country have gone through because of Trump and the way he talks and the tariffs that he was allegedly going to impose, it's all back to May. It didn't accomplish anything. He says, we get to buy these rare materials for another year. The Chinese weren't cutting them off back in May. They were still selling them to us. They didn't decide to cut them off until he started, putting these tariffs on. Now, I don't like the Chinese. I think they're out to conquer the world. They're out to knock us off our pedestal. But I don't think he accomplished anything whatsoever in any of those. I mean, he made treaties with countries we've been friends with. It's very easy for Japan and the Philippines and everybody else in the Far East to be friendly with us because they're all afraid of China, and China's right next door. So I don't see that as any great accomplishment, Ray.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think what Trump does is he creates fake controversies. We may not have had the best relations with China, but he
Right.
turned it into the worst thing in the world, and he said he's going to make it better, and then he imposed all these 100, 200% tariffs. He said we're going to do this. The economy just rattled, and prices have increased. And then he goes to China, and then he backs down off of everything that he said he was going to do. He withdraws the tariffs and says, "Look what I did! I did an agreement." And I agree with you. All he did was reinforce the existing relationship that we had before he got there. He didn't do anything,
No.
not at all.
Now, I want to mention something. This guy has unbelievable energy. I mean, really, for a man 74, 75, whatever
True.
he happens to be, it's incredible the energy he has. I have to say, I cannot believe that he is not on some kind of stimulus,
I
to
was
keep
going to
him
say
going.
the same
Really,
thing.
I'm being very serious about this. I
Yeah,
mean, he flies all over the world. He's in, there's not a day that he is not one of the number one or number two stories on the news. Okay.
yeah,
He's always doing something. He's been having a number of MRIs recently. They don't tell us. They tell us he's having them. They don't tell us why or
right.
what the results are. I'd be very interested in knowing what it is.
Well, I think a political leader who goes out there and yells and calls people names, it's so much easier to do that than to actually propose a plan to resolve a problem. He hasn't proposed any plans to resolve any problems. All he's given us are these big headlines. I'm going to increase tariffs. I'm going to cut back. We're going to destroy China. We're going to prevent the Russians from doing this. He hasn't achieved anything. And then he throws in these little things like, oh, I solved the war in Zaire and Uganda. And I'm thinking, oh, was there a war in Zaire and
Who knew
Uganda?
they were
I
fighting?
I didn't know that. But that's his big war, and he thinks he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for all that. So this guy is all about yelling, screaming, calling people names, attacking people, blurring the issue, making it personal, firing anybody that doesn't agree with him, doing dramatic things like let's suspend all the SNAP benefits for the poor. Now, I agree, SNAP is probably abused. Welfare is abused. There are people on welfare and who get SNAP who shouldn't be on welfare and getting SNAP, and we should find a way to get them opportunities to work because
Absolutely.
half the people on welfare, in my opinion, I think are able to work. And if they had an opportunity to work, they would do better and make more money. But he completely cuts all that off. He is the one, I think, the Republicans that have shut down government. They keep blaming it on the Democrats. And we're going through turmoil today because of these stupid acts on his part.
Well, I think you said it very, very well, Ray. I don't know how much more I had to add to that. All I can say is that
It's the
let us hope and pray that the Democrats take over the House of Representatives in the next midterm elections, because I think that will be very helpful to the American people. No one party rule.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the only response to all this from the far right and even from the left is to throw the Arabs and the Muslims under the bus, under the rickety CTA bus that can barely drive, where they're going to throw them under the bus and say, "Oh, geez, the FBI and state police of Michigan conducted searches at homes in Dearborn, and they arrested some people.
I
We
was
don't
just
know what they were
I was
doing."
just going to ask you about that since you brought the subject up once again. What did those radical Islamists in Dearborn, Michigan plan on doing?
Well, see, we're not told that. And the reason we're not told that is because in today's world in today's Trump world, the justice system doesn't exist. If you're a criminal, you're arrested, you're publicly charged with doing something, you're brought to a court, you're given the opportunity to respond to the charges, and then a jury of your peers decides, or a judge decides whether you're guilty or innocent. We've just cut through that whole burdensome process, apparently. It's just too much trouble to go through all that. We just grab you and we bring you to the judge and we declare that you're a terrorist. There were a bunch of kids, maybe 6 or 7 of them, that were, young people say stupid things. And maybe they said something on a chat board that got the FBI and the feds to hone in on them. They don't tell us what it was that they did. They just grab them. They knock down the doors. They surround the place, and the way they do in arresting illegal aliens who are mowing your lawn. They send 40 ICE agents to go grab the guy who's not a citizen because he's cutting your lawn, Bill.
Well,
I, you
listen,
know, I,
I guess the answer to the crime situation is like your buddy Mamdani wants, not to have the police apprehend the individual who's committing the crime, but the social worker. He wants the social worker to be there first.
well, I
To
disagree with that. I
understand this
totally
poor
disagree
person.
with that. I
Oh, do
disagree
you
with that.
disagree? I
Yes, I
can't
do.
believe
I
it.
do.
You disagree with that. Oh, thank
Yes,
God.
I do.
There's-
But I also disagree with Cuomo and the Democrat strategy, which was to do nothing about crime because crime in New York is worse than crime in Chicago. And yeah, it's relative. Oh, it went down, so it must be getting better. No, we're
we,
way up there and it went down a little bit. It's like saying, oh, inflation isn't so bad. Inflation went down a little bit. No, inflation drove us all the way up to the top. We need to come down amazingly, hugely before we actually get back to where we were.
underneath one of your friends, Joe Biden, it was 22% inflation. Now it's down
Yes,
to 2.5%.
yes, because it's so high. Inflation is measured from a measurement of, oh, what was it yesterday? It's so high that instead of bringing it down that 22%, see, that's the thing. It was up 22% under Biden, but instead of bringing it down, they stopped it, they slowed it down, and now it's only going up 2 or 3%. But it's still up 22, now 26%. That we don't look at the issues properly. They throw labels at us. He's an Islamist. These kids are Arabs. He's a socialist. He's an anti Semite. He's a Republican. He's a Democrat. Nobody says anything about the substance of issues, about who is doing what or not doing what. And the media, which is supposed to help, isn't doing its job.
Period.
Period. And close quote. End
Right.
of case. Now let's send it to the jury, Bill.
Very good.
Well, I think we're at the end, and I thought it was a pretty energetic discussion
It was
about
an energetic
those
discussion.
issues.
Yes.
And, when our hero, our champion, Hercules Trump returns, I think he did return from Asia, right?
Yes, he
What's
has.
he going to, what do you think he's going to, oh, yeah, that's right. The other thing, he can never stop doing great things. So we're going to resume testing of nuclear bombs
Oh,
pretty soon.
yes. 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 The Cold
Let's
War.
resume testing of nuclear bombs. Let's change the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War. I want peace. That's why we call it Department of War.
Well, let me just say it in closing, Ray, that uh, people in this country complain about a lot of different things. And I think we have two very good, very poor candidates for mayor of New York.
Yes, yes, we do.
But I had said before, and I'll say once again, every single citizen should get up and start doing something in behalf of the Democrats, the Republicans, or a new party. Okay.
Right.
You have to have people really participating in government in order to have a good government. And unfortunately, too many people in this country have just tuned out. They don't care about politics. The only thing they care about is complaining about politics and what the politicians are doing to them. Well, they are the only ones that can change things around, and they have to get involved. They have to get active. And I mean this sincerely. If those people back in 1776, had just moaned and complained, we would still be a colony of the great British Empire. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree, Bill. I think you summarized the problem very succinctly. People need to get up and do something and focus on the problems and solving the problems, not focusing on, all the superficial things like what your race or religion is or where you come from or whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, and then throwing tax money at answers rather than trying to solve them. All right, Bill, I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski, and this is Two Guys on Politics.
We'll see you again next week, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Bye bye.